The state calls Kevin Horne.
Can you spell your last name, please?
H-O-R-N.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Your name, sir?
Dr. Kevin Horne,
And who do you work for?
Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office.
How long have you worked there?
Almost 12 years.
And what is it that you do over there at the medical examiner's office?
I am a medical examiner. I'm charged with examining deceased individuals and certifying a cause and manner of death within the county.
And in terms of your education, where did you go to medical school?
The University of Maryland,
And what year did you graduate?
1995.
When did you begin working for the medical examiner's office again?
2001.
And drawing your attention back to June of 2008, did you have occasion to conduct a medical examination on the body of Travis Alexander?
Yes.
With regard to an examination of an individual such as this, what are the first steps that are taken?
The body is received under seal. It's in a sealed body bag with a number that's unique to that case. That seal is broken in my presence. The bag is opened, and then we examine the outside of the body, collecting evidence, performing photographs, and then we move on to an external examination, documenting injuries, and then an internal examination or an autopsy.
In this particular case, were there any x-rays taken?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of the x-rays?
Mostly to document internal trauma and or projectiles that we may need to recover.
I'm going to show you some photographs. Take a look at exhibits 170 through 173. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And are these photographs that were taken as part of your medical examination of Travis Alexander?
Yes.
And specifically, do they include the identification photograph as well as the x-rays?
Yes.
I move for the admission of exhibits 174. What are we looking at here?
The back of the right hand.
Sir, one of the things that we know in this case is that the body was in its home for a while, or days before it was actually discovered. So was there any decomposition that was associated with the body, and are we looking at any in this particular photograph, or was it other parts of the body?
Yes, there was a state of what we would call intermediate decomposition, or the middle stage of decomposition, and it involved the whole body. And in this picture in particular, we can see green discoloration of the hand and also early what we call mummification of the fingertips.
And if you take a look over here on the thumb, why is that dark? Or I guess in the rest of the hand?
It's dried.
And is that part of the mummification process that you described for me?
Yes.
Are there any injuries to the upper portion of Mr. Alexander's right hand?
No.
Let's take a look at Exhibit 175. Now the fingers are extended, and we do see that there is some darkness on each of those fingers. Do you see it? Fingernail areas. Do you see that?
Yes.
What causes that?
Again, that's decompositional change.
And are there any injuries on the top of the arm?
There is an injury to the thumb, which I don't think is really clearly visible in this photograph.
All right, let's then take a look at exhibit number 176, which shows us what? What are we looking at here?
This is the palm of the right hand, and I think there may be another picture that shows this better, but there is an incised or a cutting injury of the tip of the right thumb.
And exhibit 177, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
In looking at injuries, are you able to tell whether they were made before death, after death, or at the time of death as part of the examination?
Sometimes. It depends on the case.
How about this one right here? Could you tell by looking at it and conducting an analysis whether or not this was done either before death, at the time of death, or after death?
I think it was done before death. There is hemorrhage associated with it.
When you say that there's hemorrhage associated with it, explain that a little bit more to me. What is it that causes a person to hemorrhage if they're alive, which is what I think you're telling me?
Well, if you have a heartbeat, you're going to have blood flow to an area that's injured, and so you'll have blood flow from an injury. So if the skin is cut or torn, there will be a great deal of blood that will come from that injury in a living person. A deceased person will ooze some blood, but not a great deal.
So in this one right here, it is your opinion that Mr. Alexander was alive when this was inflicted?
Yes, taking into consideration what I said and also in context with other injuries that are on the hands.
And what kind of injury is this one that we're looking at?
It's a sharp force injury. It's caused by a blade or a sharp forced object.
If an individual, let's get away a little bit from a knife right now and just focus on the individual maybe who is dragged or is hit, that kind of thing. If an individual is dead and somebody applies some force, hits them, are they going to bruise necessarily or not?
There may be something that would look like a bruise, but it will not be as large and the color will be different in a deceased person because there's no blood flow to the area. So you're actually just breaking blood vessels in that area, and whatever blood happens to be there will ooze out, but there won't be blood pumped into the area.
And part of the reason I ask that is I see that there's sort of like on top of it a little bit of a darker area. Is that mummification or is that bruising?
It may be a combination of both. There's some darkening underneath the nail there, but in the context of the mummification, I can't really say for sure.
Are you familiar with the term defensive wounds?
Yes.
And define that for me, please.
They're based largely on location on the body. If you have injuries to the backs of the forearms or to the palms or backs of the hands, you can have gunshot wounds in those locations, or in the case of an assault with a knife or an edged weapon, you can have cuts or incised injuries to the backs or the palms or the backs of the forearm, and it's consistent with someone trying to either grab the knife or fend off wounds or fend off injury.
And the way you described it, by necessity, the person would have to be conscious and alive, correct?
Yes.
And is this that we're looking at, the right thumb, is that a defensive wound?
Could be, yes, consistent with that.
Let's take a look now at exhibit number 178. What do we see here?
It's the back of the left hand.
And again, with the back of the left hand, if you notice this little portion right here, what is that right there?
It appears to be what we would call a void in the blood. Maybe there's an area of pooling the hand was resting in, and the blood is not staining that area.
Okay. But that's not an injury, correct?
No.
Exhibit 179, what are we looking at there?
This is the back of the left hand.
Do we see any injuries here or not?
You can see the edge of an injury on the side below the thumb, the side of the hand, and then also on the back of the thumb. So there are two injuries that are partially visible here.
And those injuries, if we look at Exhibit 180, do those show those a little bit more?
Yes, this is the palm of the left hand, again showing from the side of the thumb near the wrist. There's a fairly deep wound that's going into the muscle there. There are two separate wounds of the palm below the index finger, and then I believe there's another injury on the thumb that we've already described.
In looking at these, just to the naked eye, and obviously naked eye may not tell us everything, as we compare those to the injury to the right thumb, these seem to be a little bit deeper. Is that true? Or not?
Yes.
And how deep are these in comparison to the ones that we saw in the thumb?
The one on the thumb is fairly superficial. It just clips off part of the nail. This is actually going into the soft tissue and the muscle beneath the hand, so it's going in a depth of about 1/4 of an inch for all three injuries.
And if you look at this, are you able to tell us what type of blade is doing this other than that it's a knife blade?
All I can say is that it's a sharp-edged object.
Take a look at Exhibit 181. And this has a scale to it, correct?
Yes.
And so, for those of us that are really not versed in metrics, how big would you say this one is, the larger of the two?
That measurement in inches is 1 3/4 inch.
And this one right here, the one down there?
3/4 of an inch.
Taking a look at Exhibit 182, now we're looking at those first two injuries that we described, the one near the wrist and the one on the higher up on the thumb, correct?
Yes.
Were these also deep, this one that I'm pointing to near the wrist, was that deeper than the one on the right thumb?
Yes.
And if we look at 183, we have the scale there, correct?
Yes.
How big was that one?
That was measured in inches, 1 1/2 inch, and on the back of the thumb, 1 inch.
One of the things that we talked about with regard to the other injury to the right hand was whether or not they were consistent with defensive wounds. In this one, were these consistent with defensive wounds?
Yes.
And does that mean that Mr. Alexander was alive at the time that these injuries were inflicted?
I believe he was.
Would they have bled at the time?
Yes.
Your name, sir?
Dr. Kevin Horne,
And who do you work for?
Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office.
How long have you worked there?
Almost 12 years.
And what is it that you do over there at the medical examiner's office?
I am a medical examiner. I'm charged with examining deceased individuals and certifying a cause and manner of death within the county.
And in terms of your education, where did you go to medical school?
The University of Maryland,
And what year did you graduate?
1995.
When did you begin working for the medical examiner's office again?
2001.
And drawing your attention back to June of 2008, did you have occasion to conduct a medical examination on the body of Travis Alexander?
Yes.
With regard to an examination, the state calls Kevin Horne.
Can you spell your last name, please?
H-O-R-N.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Of an individual such as this, what are the first steps that are taken?
The body is received under seal. It's in a sealed body bag with a number that's unique to that case. That seal is broken in my presence. The bag is opened, and then we examine the outside of the body, collecting evidence, performing photographs, and then we move on to an external examination